Hello, welcome back to my fave fanfics. Here, I post, well, my favorite fanfictions, if that wasn't obvious. I do hope you'll enjoy them as much as I do. Please like and subscribe for more content. Without further ado, let's get started.
Welcome to the sixth part of What If Toshiro Hitsugaya Was Sent to Hogwarts? Credit goes to SapphireMonns. Chapter 18. A Cup of Quidditch. May rolled in unceremoniously as tensions grew between the rivalry of Gryffindor and Slytherin. In Quidditch terms, of course. The final was taking place, and as the Gryffindor seeker, Harry was near his wits' end with pressure from a certain Quidditch leader, constantly pestering the chosen one to catch the snitch when they were more than 50 points ahead to qualify in winning the Quidditch Cup. And so there the captain was, seated on the highest of the stands, a small blue book nestled in his hands. Perfectly content in reading, the ice captain donned a sleeveless, collared white shirt, black jeans ending with his corresponding fingerless gloves, combat boots, and thin tie. A bronze belt glinted in contrast with the black and white on the captain as he was eased comfortably, wand in boot, his sword gigai at his wrist and a gloved hand holding up his book. All was quiet in the world for a moment. But like all good things, it came to a quick end. It was when the captain was halfway through the tail of the bamboo cutter when he sensed 10 familiar Rayotses, consisting of the Gryffindor team and the Golden Trio, Potter being a person in each category. Not even bothering to regain his place on the book, Toshiro held back a groan as he could feel the Rayotses nearing him. Replacing the book into a small bag that was too little to contain much of anything, the captain raised an eyebrow to find the entire team and trio nearing him, all geared up but Granger and the youngest Weasley present. "I wonder what they want from you, Master." Sephiroth mused as SapphireMonns and Toshiro nodded the same, only to narrow his teal orbs in realization a millisecond later. "They want me to help them. Or Potter, in this case." Toshiro revealed a moment later, as he noted the extra broom and gear they carried, too small for any of them but perfect for the captain to wear. "I can see why," SapphireMonns remarked as the 10 were several hundred feet away. "It's not like they are ignorant of your speed and strength, Master." "As they should be," Toshiro retorted as he thought back when the class was in defense against the dark arts, one afternoon when they were practicing wizarding duels. Snape had attended as well, much to the Gryffindor's chagrin opposing to the Slytherin's enthusiasm. It was not a seemingly good idea as the opposing houses were placed against one another, rather than to practice within their housemates. One by one, the students fired spell after charm after jinx at the other, until one was overpowered, disarmed, or unable to continue. Soon enough, it was the captain's turn, plowed against Marcus Flint, a repeating senior in the non-existent 8th year, failing his final exams. The senior towered over the captain to his concealed chagrin, Flint's muscular body appearing to overpower the captain's lean ones, as the former's was visible under his robes with the captain's aloof self without his cloak. The taller had large protruding teeth, troublemaker-labeling gray eyes, and short coarse black locks. Sneering at the captain who merely regarded his opponent with an almost bored look, Flint brandished his ebony, disfigured wand. The captain followed in suit, displaying his own U-wand, only to break his exchange with Flint to ask a question, all eyes on him. "Professor Lupin," Toshiro called before he voiced a question. "In customary duels, are we restricted into using certain methods to disarm or incapacitate our opponent?" Quote, "Yes, Hitsugaya," Lupin answered, as he explained for all. "Only magical means are to be used and no physical contact between the duelists. However, in the agreement of both parties that limitations are lifted, then, they are waived." "Does the transfer not understand simple rules?" Flint sneered as snickers enveloped from Slytherin as the captain turned a lazy eye toward his opponent. "Not from lackadaisical imbeciles who cannot even pass his final exams, Flint. Hitsugaya retorted icily as Marcus growled in response, the classroom enveloping in silence before the jeers from Gryffindor sounded. With a permanent frown, Snape silenced the class with a glare, as he turned to the captain and his opponent on the platform. Yielding to the potion's master's silent order, the two walked away from the center of the platform, until they were at opposing ends, each taking an accepted combative position, Flint sneering snobbishly as Toshiro stood almost lazily, wands held at the ready. Begin! Snape waved as Flint struck first. Confringo! Flint shouted as a burst of flame erupted from his wand, toward the captain, who merely narrowed his eyes before he lifted his wand in a whisper. Finite! At the captain's spell, the flames receded and died as Flint fired an encore of his previous spell, igniting more flames. Enough of this! Toshiro snapped as he rose a hand. A Kido barrier erected at the captain's will after he executed a fluid backflip, needing the idle time to mutter the incantation. After the barrier and flames receded once more, the captain sent a silent, Expelliarmus, not too powerful to send Flint back and off guard but his wand still in hand. Flint flustered, the captain had him where he wanted him. Glacius Duo! Toshiro incanted icily as ice-cold, blizzard-like winds came from the tip of the captain's wand, enveloping Flint into a frozen statue, feet frozen over to keep the horror-stricken face of Marcus Flint in view for all to see as he noted the supervising professor's raised expressions at his usage of Kido. You had informed me of magical means, Professor Lupin. Toshiro explained aloud, as Snape released a shivering Flint from the ice, which seemed more durable than usual. You never informed me that I was restricted to only Western magic. To say that nearly everyone was too frightened to take on the captain in a duel was an understatement. When Hermione questioned him, he merely shrugged, saying dueling in the first place was useless. What do you mean, Hitsugaya? She questioned as they awaited everyone else to exit, needing to use their time turners to get to their other class, noting a lingering Lupin and Snape. Limitations on duels upon no physical contact is futile if you are trying to learn how to defend yourself. Toshiro elaborated vaguely as he shouldered his bag as Snape rose an eyebrow at the transfer's words, Lupin not excluded neither. In real combat, the enemy is not going to wait for you to get back on your feet. Right? Quote. Hermione nodded, still oblivious as to where the point would lead. The same could be said of physical contact, Toshiro argued. Who is to say that they cannot trip you and cause you to drop your wand? If they were to kick your hand that you cannot pick up your wand, or rip out your tongue to silence you from saying any of your spells, for that matter? What would you do then, Granger? Quote. The girl had no argument and neither did the professors. Instead, Hermione voiced a question. Then how did you do magic in Japan, Hitsugaya? Quote. Sighing before answering, the ice captain half-lidded his orbs. We are trained with basics in hand-to-hand before we are qualified into using Kido. Only those who are placed in high positions are able to execute magic in hand-to-hand combat without incantation. That way, where you cannot do with hand-to-hand or with weaponry, you are still able to execute magic as if it were second nature. Snape cut in, as the ice captain turned to the professor with still lidded orbs. Exactly. And with a snap of his fingers, the captain disappeared, time turner hidden in his fingers. So how about it, Toshiro? Quote. It's Hitsugaya. Toshiro snapped as he turned to an apologetic Oliver Wood, the captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. The tall boy was well built and burly for his age but not too much, and held a commanding air that demanded that he would be in charge, whether anyone liked it or not. He wore a competitive glint in his dark chocolate eyes as he proposed his proposition, his short brown hair dancing in the early winds. Sorry, we forgot to tell you he's sensitive about his name, mate. One of the twins remarked as they hovered over the seated ice captain and Quidditch captain, with the trio and the chasers at the lower stands, looking up to the conversation. Hitsugaya, Oliver amended as the captain rose an eyebrow. I just would like to request you to play an opposing seeker to help Harry get better in catching the snitch, playing a mock game with the Hufflepuff Quidditch team. Why me, Wood? Toshiro questioned right back, ignoring the request at the moment. Why not, Diggory, isn't that his position anyway? Quote. Oliver grimaced as he spoke. Cedric is out at Hogsmeade this weekend and isn't coming back till later. So, that's why we're asking you. Come on, Master. Sephiroth encouraged before Toshiro could refuse Oliver's request. It's only practice and besides, it might be fun. I agree. SapphireMonns voiced. You have been alone for too long and besides, you just visited Black earlier this week, informing him that Lupin was aware of the truth. And you already submitted your report to the head captain. Not to mention you already finished your homework. Sephiroth added as Toshiro found himself out of excuses. I refuse. Toshiro replied bluntly. I do not have any desire to babysit Potter on my day off. You're not. SapphireMonns retorted. Besides, if you do actually do this, you will bring Potter's ego down a notch, that way he can learn how to maneuver faster and therefore, survive. And you having fun is an optional bonus. Well aware that he was cornered, the ice captain gave Oliver an annoyed glare to which the Quidditch captain recoiled, before voicing his consent with an icy tone hinted with irritation. Very well. What's the plan? Quote. Throwing on a small sleeveless outer robe, the ice captain stood in the pitch with the Hufflepuff team behind him, all donned in identical robes to the captain's. Colored a canary yellow on the outside with deep ebony inside, the outer robe was colored so as it bore over the players' shoulders, each of their last names automatically altered on the back when donned. Changing his black gloves for the arm guards, Toshiro latched them on as he did the same with leg guards and shoes. Turning to his temporary team, Toshiro found himself towered as he looked up at them. Seeing how your captain and seeker is not here, and since you all are here to help Potter improve along with the rest of the Gryffindor team, is it all right with you all that I lead you for this mock game? Toshiro asked civilly, his voice cold and indifferent but polite and civil. We have no problem with it, Hitsugaya. If you'll have us, course. One of the team's chasers smiled in welcome as the others voiced the same, the speaker a black-haired boy with a kind smile. Name's Malcolm Priest by the way, I hold the position as one of Hufflepuff's chaser. Deciding to do introductions, they all did so, ending with the ice captain. Heidi McAvoy, Hufflepuff's chaser. A brown-haired girl waved with a smile. Maxine O'Flaherty, Hufflepuff's beater. This one had a large smile as she sent the captain a small salute. Herbert Fleet, Hufflepuff's keeper. The boy had a timid glint in his light green orbs, but smiled softly nonetheless, despite his built build. Tamsin Appleby, Hufflepuff's last chaser. The girl laughed playfully as she clapped a hand over the boy next to her, following in suit. Anthony Rickett, Hufflepuff's other beater. The said boy smiled just as easily, his dark blue eyes glinting with welcome as he playfully shoved Tamsin off, who stuck her tongue out just as playfully. And I am Toshiro Hitsugaya, Hufflepuff's temporary captain and seeker. Toshiro smirked as chuckles ignited from the team. Now then, Toshiro called for attention, signaling that jokes were over. Even though this is practice and no victor is to be placed, it does not mean we'll easily let them win or lose for that matter. Identical smirks played on the Hufflepuff team as they gathered around their temporary captain, plans that rivaled even the most devious of Slytherins. You have a broom, Hitsugaya? Oliver asked when they were about to mount into the air, the opposing teams facing one another. I think we have some spare in the sheds back there somewhere. Do not trouble yourself, Wood. Toshiro waved off the concern as he flicked out his wand, summoning his broom from one of the velvet bags, as Toshiro revealed it to be a Nimbus 2001. Why did you get a Nimbus 2001 if you don't play Quidditch, Hitsugaya? Harry piped up as he glanced at the said broom. It was a gift. Toshiro replied evasively as he eyed the said broom. In reality, the broom was indeed a Nimbus 2001, but was purchased for Urahara to study in the holiday break, to which the mad scientist had discovered that the broom was enchanted with a small amount of Ryotsu. The wood from the original tree from which the broom was carved was intact, and by adding several enchantments, the broom was made. However, in retrieval of the said broom, the ice captain, after receiving it in middle of a meeting, had found that the mad scientist had made some adjustments to the broom. From the report, the broom was able to withstand most spells and Kido, along with physical ailments, and was usable in application with Shunpo and outside of his Gigai. Turning away from the irritating scientist, the captain turned his attention to the mock game. Now that we've done and settled that I have a broom, let's start. Hitsugai is right. Oliver nodded as he turned to Madame Hooch, who oversaw the practice. Let's go. Quote. And at Oliver's words, all the players mounted, and with the release of the snitch and bludgers, the throw of the quaffle, the mock practice game began. Chaos ensued as a chaser from Gryffindor caught the quaffle first, to which the ice captain allowed as Heidi and Tamsin followed behind, but not too close. With a nod to Ricket, the Hufflepuff beater intercepted one of the twins' bludger backbeat, the bludger in question, sent to the chaser with the quaffle, causing her to halt, dropping the quaffle to Tamsin. Executing a feint toward one of the goalposts, Tamsin veered toward the left post only to turn to the center in the next second, scoring the first goal. Giving one another high fives good-heartedly, the chasers turned to their, as of now, captain, who merely gave them a look that said, the game was yet to be over, for it was only the beginning. And it was. By the time it was midday, the game was still ongoing with a number of spectators as word spread of the mock game ensuing, as even the actual captain of the Hufflepuff Quidditch team was watching the match, having returned early. As to rules, there were no breaks in the game, and therefore, there was constant action. Toshiro watched high above all the other players. Even Harry, who kept himself hovered over the height of the stands, glancing over here and narrowing orbs over there. A glint of gold floated beside the captain, the snitch twinkling with playfulness as if it was trying to get the captain's attention. But the captain paid it no heed as he could find it at any given time. Seeing how each one of those things had a differing ryotsu, although, it was faint. But it was no trouble for the ice captain to detect. The score currently is 180 to 130 in favor of Hufflepuff. Toshiro summarized as he sent a nod to O'Flaherty, who batted a bludger to the opposing Gryffindor players who were forced to break formation, only to have one of the twins send it right back, to which the Hufflepuff beater smirked as her counterpart appeared beside her. Together, the beaters sent a doppelbeater defense to the separated chaser who held the quaffle, Katie Bell, raising her broom as the vibrations caused her to drop the quaffle, which Malcolm Priest caught. Toshiro watched as the fire in Oliver Wood's dark chocolate orbs grow, an almost maniacal glint of competitive spirit. He almost looks like Kuritsuchi when he finds a suitable vessel to experiment on. Toshiro remarked as two amused growls echoed in his mind as he suddenly dove toward the pitch, with a surprised Harry on the toe. All eyes were suddenly glued to the white-haired transfer as he dove into the sidelines of the stands, eyeing Potter's maneuvers. Potter is certainly fast with his firebolt, but can he outtake a slow Shunpo? The captain asked rhetorically, as he followed suit to his words, to find Potter several yards away trying to keep up. Apparently not. Dodging a bludger almost effortlessly, the ice captain returned to the public eye's view, making his way to the pitch as the bludger gave another go for the captain. Sighing almost in pity for the enchanted ball, the captain allowed his body to hang upside down on his broomstick, effectively avoiding the bludger. Time to end this game. Toshiro thought as he watched Priest score another 10 points, in the distraction of the captain's blatant entrance to the pitch. Giving a look to Fleet, Toshiro watched seemingly indifferent as he called to O'Flaherty and Ricket, executing the final phase of the plan. Priest neared the captain as they watched Heidi maneuver with the intercepted quaffle in between Gryffindor plays. Inform McAvoy and Appleby that we are transitioning to the last phase. Toshiro all but ordered as if he were speaking to a subordinate as Priest nodded, flitting away on his broom after his comrades as Toshiro eyed a winded Harry, locking gazes. Competitive fire erupted in Harry's eyes as he understood the captain's silent message. Catch it before me, if you can, Potter. As if sensing the tension between its pursuers, the snitch glinted between the seekers, as Lee Jordan announced his commentary. And the golden snitch has made its appearance. Catching it gives the seeker 150 points. Who will end this game victorious, Harry Potter or our very first transfer, Toshiro Hitsugaya? Exclamation mark. Quote. Cheers echoed as Ravenclaws watched for the fun of the match, Hufflepuffs and Gryffindors for their respective houses, with Slytherin for without a doubt to harness any weaknesses. As they watched the seekers dive for the snitch, the golden ball, making them graze the freshly cut grass of the pitch. Harry held a slight advantage as he pulled his firebolt when the snitch made a sharp turn upwards, the captain trailing behind him effortlessly as he sent the green-eyed boy a glance, only for the said person to follow his line of sight, to find a bludger nearing the seeker. A graze of Harry's firebolt was all the captain needed as Tamsin scored another 10 points, Harry falling back due to Ricketts' hit to the bludger, seemingly aiming for Belle who was pursuing Tamsin who held the quaffle, only for it to graze Harry. With a grab for the golden ball, the ice captain held out the said snitch, glinting as if signifying the mock game was over as cheers from all rang out as it was a game well played, ending with a victory for Hufflepuff, 350-130 as decreed by Madame Hooch. Dismounting his broom, Toshiro found himself lifted by his temporary team as he was treated with victorious smiles and thumbs-ups. The golden snitch still in hand as the ice captain found himself sporting a smirk himself. After the chaos was over, the captain found himself at the Grand Hall with the entire Quidditch teams of Hufflepuff and Gryffindor surrounding him, Wood and Diggory in front him. White tresses damp, the captain had thrown on a hooded white V-neck under a leather jacket, the hood thrown causally over his snow locks, several leather belts wrapped over his waist as black jeans covered his lean legs, finished with the captain's habitual combat boots. That was awesome, Hitsugaya. Diggory cried as he placed chicken wings on his plate. If you were my house, I think I might have had to have given you my position. Quote. How did you get one up on us like that? Exclamation mark. Oliver all but demanded. I knew you would be good, Hitsugaya. But you plummeted us like you knew what we were going to do. Quote. The ice captain rose an eyebrow before he answered, lowering his chopsticks with a slide. Strategic tactics, Wood. I merely counted on several variables to your habits and noteworthy moves in previous games and planned out a victory from there. You did all that in the 20 minutes before the game started? Harry questioned in disbelief as the captain nodded, not seeing how it was so amazing. Is this the first time you played Quidditch, Hitsugaya? Oliver voiced, as Toshiro nodded, the taller groaning. I lost to a first-timer. Now, we'll never win. Quote. Do not belittle yourself so soon, Wood. Toshiro advised, his icy teal orbs glaring into the Gryffindor captains. By the way Slytherin plays, you need to work on making your chasers to be quick and agile to avoid bludgers, with the twins doing their best to strike back at Slytherin, while Potter needs to merely adjust to his broom. That is if you wish to win, which I am sure you would like. And of myself? Oliver challenged as Toshiro replied nonchalantly. To not allow the game to overpower your thoughts, before Oliver could protest, Toshiro rose a hand. I do not mean that you should not think about the game, Wood, Toshiro clarified. I am merely informing you to not let your competitive nature to oversee the main goal, which is create an opening for Potter to catch the snitch at the appropriate time. Hitsugaya's got a point, Cap, one of the twins piped up as he clapped a hand over their Quidditch captain's shoulder as the other followed in suit. Yup, he's just really smart that way. Sides, he showed us a lot of ways we can trip up Slytherin. Quote. True, Harry smiled as he drank from his goblet. He moved fast and was hard to keep up with even on my firebolt when we were in the stands, I almost lost him. Ignoring the singing praises from the students, Toshiro grumbled internally as two certain ice dragons teasing echoed in his inner world, that a certain ice captain had fun. We told you so. Shut up. True to the ice captain's words, Slytherin employed the dirtiest of tactics in the Quidditch final, but by the end of the day, Harry had led his team to victory, catching the snitch in the opportune moment. Therefore, making Gryffindor first in points in the Quidditch Cup. Once congratulations and cheers were exchanged and nearly all had gone to retire for the night, the entire Quidditch team had gathered to the ice captain's humble perch, which was the desk furthest from the fire, where Toshiro was currently writing a report to Soul Society. His penmanship intelligible by all seeing as how he wrote in kanji, with his snow-white quill with a slumbering Korohana who had decently chosen to sleep in the middle of his papers. Hitsugaya. Quote. Toshiro lowered his quill as he rose an eyebrow at the smiling Potter, and to his surprise found the team behind him as well. Yes, Potter? Toshiro replied, his voice aloof and icy. Do you require something of my attention? Quote. A pair of arms grabbed for the captain only for the transfer to slip away with narrowed orbs on the desk. Wand out and his owl latched to his shoulder, ebony orbs sending daggers. The twins fell over one another in an unceremonious heap as they pouted where the captain was a moment ago. And he slips from our fingers again, Fred began as George finished. Such a mean one, you're, Gaia. It's Hitsugaya to both of you, Weasley. Toshiro snapped as he lowered his wand, jumping to the floor as the rest of the team stifled chuckles, when the teal orbs caught another redhead and a bushy-haired one. And I might as well affect that to you as well, Weasley. Toshiro added as an afterthought to Ron, who gave the captain an indignant look much to everyone else's amusement. Turning away from the games, Toshiro rose an eyebrow as the team gathered once more, Oliver in the front with his hand out. Hitsugaya. Oliver began as he bowed his head with the rest of the team in the tow, making the ice captain blink in surprise. Thank you for helping us in practicing for the Quidditch final and help us win the cup. We wouldn't have been able to win if you hadn't won against us in the practice, pointing out the kinks in our players and teamwork. Rising their heads, they found an indifferent white-haired transfer who merely shrugged, but his teal orbs said it all as he smirked. It was no difference. I'm sure you would have won anyway, with the many fouls that Slytherin had played. Nevertheless, Oliver shook his head as he held out a hand, one that the ice captain grasped, the captains exchanging smirks. Thank you. You're welcome. Chapter 19. Prelude of Prophetical Finals. The ice captain had a rather boorish day, surprisingly enough, considering who and what he was, along with where and why he was there. He was the 10th Division captain of the 13 court squads of Soul Society, attending Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry to gather information on the species of mortals called wizards. It is rather odd, now that I think about it. Toshiro remarked internally as SapphireMonns snorted as Sephiroth stifled a laugh. You barely realize this now? SapphireMonns asked rhetorically. You are just as odd as it gets, Master. Sephiroth laughed. You are the youngest captain to attain your status, a prodigy, an undead wizard who possesses knowledge that could rival the headmaster, and not to mention your appearance. You are the exact definition of odd. SapphireMonns summarized bluntly as the captain scowled. I got it. Toshiro snapped, as he returned to his 6th exam as of the week. Care of Magical Creatures was finished without much event, other than several spelling mistakes and wording that the captain and Hermione had pointed out to Hagrid when they had handed in their exams within the first 10 minutes, the latter being a minute slower than the former. In the same time span, arithmancy took a longer amount of time, the captain finishing within 30 and Hermione in 45, with a beaming smile for each from Professor Vector. Followed by potions, the captain proved his prodigal intellect in higher scores than Hermione once more as he replicated the correct brew and written exam, half an hour before her with Snape's echoing scoldings over Potter, Weasley, and Longbottom. Muggle studies followed with the same events in arithmancy, Toshiro before Hermione, much to the girl's chagrin. Ancient Runes was a lost cause for Hermione as was Lupin's, McGonagall's, and Flitwick's. Divination, however, was the exception. Having the previous events of a fuming Hermione and an ignorant Professor Trelawney, Toshiro had learned from Potter and Weasley that the girl had dropped divination along with Muggle studies in her frustration. So, there he was, taking the said divination exam. Wrapping up his answers, Toshiro gathered his things and exam, ignoring the shocked glances from his cohorts, who barely made it to the end of the 10th question of the 114. Finding the theorized loony professor, Toshiro narrowed his teal orbs as she spoke to Potter, glancing subtly toward the shadowed corner. There should do as of now. Noting that the rest of the class was focused upon their exams, the captain set his exam on the divination professor's desk, walking out of the class without a sound, pulling a golden chain around his neck. Now then, let's see if I can out-shunpo and outsmart myself. With a flip of the small hourglass, the ice captain was gone. Execution? Exclamation mark. Quote. Toshiro sealed the letter with a stamp of his ring on the teal wax, a bright splash of color on his black envelope as he held out the said letter to Korahana, who studied the letter before snatching it, flying out to deliver her master's message. The ice captain rose an eyebrow at the outburst from his perch, well acquainted with who it had shouted it so indignantly, to his chagrin. Longbottom. Toshiro identified the said person as he allowed a leg to dangle off the side as he had seated himself on the roof of one of the halls leading off the grounds. It was past curfew, as the ice captain had planned, if Trelawney's prediction rang true. Dressed in his Shiakusho and Haori for once, the captain and his respective Zanpakuto were out of their gigai, the previous emergency captain's meeting having given the ice captain leeway to do as he wished. Fingering the Bluetooth in his ear, the captain narrowed his orbs as he sensed 4 Rayotses that were supposed to be there, but apparently not. So, as Trelawney prophesied, Potter, Granger, and Weasley have come out. Followed by Longbottom. Toshiro observed as the said 4 made their way to what appeared to be Hagrid's hut. Flicking out his U-wand, the ice captain incanted silently. And with a wave of his wand, he was invisible. Now, then. Let the prophecy play out. Why is Buckbeak going to be executed? Neville whispered as the trio made room for the boy, to which the 3 visibly frowned at. As if there was a room to begin with to squeeze him in. Ignoring the question, Harry and Ron took to making their way to the half-giant's home as Hermione took it upon herself the task with a rather annoyed sigh. Within the several moments it took to arrive at the half-giant's hut, Neville was informed of the Hippogriff's trial, Lucius Malfoy's interference, and Buckbeak's failed appeal which led to his impending execution. So, that's why you guys are sneaking out tonight? Neville questioned as they nodded, knocking on the door. With a half-hearted swing, Hagrid opened the door, revealing his small but humble home. It was only one room, with a fireplace and a messily made bed on the sides. A sole lamp lit the home where the fireplace did not, with hams and pheasants hanging off the ceiling. Several knickknacks and other odd things adjourned the room, however, made no attempt to falter the home's warmth and welcoming air. Harry? Hagrid called out as he found seemingly no one at his doorstep, seeing as how the boy was the one who owned the invisibility cloak. Are Hermione and Ron with you? Quote. Neville too, Hagrid. Harry greeted with a weak smile as he pulled the cloak off of them. All of them exchanged greetings with tense smiles and weakly pulled consolations on an oblivious hippogriff outside the very hut, who nestled happily in the pumpkin patch of his owner, his collar strung comfortably around his neck. Look at him. Hagrid sighed as Harry flanked behind him by the window with Ron, Hermione, and Neville seated by a table. Loves the smell of the trees when the wind blows through them. Why don't we just set him free? Harry suggested weakly. Shaking his head, Hagrid refused. They'd know it was me, and then Dumbledore would get in trouble. He's coming down, Dumbledore, Hagrid said as he began to choke on his words. S says he wants to be with me when they... A pause. When it happens. Noting that the atmosphere was too dark and disrespectful in the presence of guests, Hagrid steeled himself as he pulled himself away from the window with a declaration that all knew. A great man, Dumbledore. We'll stay with you too, Hagrid. Hermione followed as the boys followed with nods, only to have the half-giant do the opposite. You'll do no such thing. Hagrid argued back, his refusal evident. Think I want you lot seeing something like that? Quote. No, the half-giant drew the line. You just drink your tea and be off. Oh. Hagrid paused as he neared a milk jug beside Neville, who flinched away. Before you do, Ron? With a tender hand, the half-giant pulled out a fat rat, also known as Scabbers, as his owner broke out into a large smile, meeting the half-giant halfway to hold his pet. Scabbers. You're alive. Quote. Keep a closer eye on your pet. Hagrid scolded lightly as he eyed the only girl in the room, with Neville doing the same as the said girl stood, her eyes expectant as she spoke. I think you owe someone an apology. Right. Ron bowed in mock respect. Next time I see Crookshanks, I'll let him know. I meant me. Hermione growled as she nearly began to argue more when Neville called out, making all of the turn to the window where Neville and Harry stood. Hagrid. Quote. Walking down the path that led to the hut was Dumbledore, Minister Cornelius Fudge, and the dreaded executioner, Walden McNair, who was tall and muscular, his face hidden with a black cloth as he carried a large axe with ease, eyes glinting with bloodlust. Oh, cricky, Hagrid said as he caught sight of them, turning to the children in his company. It's late. Nearly dark. You shouldn't be here. If someone sees you outside this time of night, you'll be in trouble. Particularly you, Harry. Hagrid pointed out as he pulled the invisibility cloak over the four, a knock sounding from his front door. With you in moment. Hagrid called as he ushered them out the back door with hurried waves. Hurry. Quote. As the half-giant opened the door to greet his new guests, Hermione slipped open the back door with a silent creak, with Harry, Ron and Neville in the tow. As the moment the three wizards entered the hut, they exited with quick steps. The four of them took shelter behind the piles of enlarged pumpkins, watching the inhabitants in the hut intently as they conversed, echoing into the outskirts. Well, I think we should get down to our business, shall we? An unfamiliar voice began as the children assumed it to be the executioners. Very well. That was Fudge, the children recognized. Very well. It is the decision of the Committee for the Disposal of Dangerous Creatures that the hippogriff, Buckbeak, is hereinafter called, the Condemned, shall be executed this day at sundown. Dear, that was undoubtedly Hagrid as Dumbledore's voice sounded next, his voice warm and comforting. Now, Hagrid. Now, come. It's all right, it'll be all right. Dumbledore confronted as they ushered out to the pumpkin patch to where, the Condemned, laid, still oblivious. Noting this as their chance to flee, the four turned away, backs toward the hut as they heard the eventual slice of a hippogriff's neck. Toshiro watched as the axe met and sliced the hippogriff's neck, its head rolling slightly as it was dislodged. Teal orbs icy yet glinted with a hint of sadness as he saw the soul exit the body. Well aware that the soul could see him, he led the hippogriff to the woods, undoing the invisibility spell as he smiled softly as the hippogriff bowed. Hello, Buckbeak. The ice captain whispered as he returned the gesture, bowing his head to the soul. You have gone through much, hippogriff. But Toshiro paused as he stroked the departed soul's feathers. Will you assist me, so that I can help you return to your master? Quote. Crooning softly, Buckbeak nipped the captain's cheek with its curved beak, agreeing with the captain as orange met teal, the orange glowing with ferocity despite its fate as the teal glowed with slight mirth as the two figures shunned Pioed into disappearance. Only to appear hovering over the two children who currently battled a tree, apparently trying to enter a hole in the base of the roots of the said tree. Watching the two as they were thrown into it, Toshiro dismounted from Buckbeak as he signaled for the beast to wait. Pressing a button on his Bluetooth, Toshiro opened up his communications on a secure line. Matsumoto. Are the squads in position? Quote. A pause. Very well. Keep hidden until I order otherwise. Another pause. No. Send one of the squadron to perform Kanso at my location, and when Black and Lupin arrive, I will lead them to you. Be careful, Matsumoto. With a push of a button, the line was terminated with the ice captain noting the nearing of a feral Ryotsu. For a professor who has had his condition as a werewolf since his youth in Hogwarts, does he not realize that tonight is a full moon? Toshiro sighed as he stood seemingly in the air. No matter, Lupin is well aware of the situation that I have explained to him. As is Black, but how will you ensure that he will live, Master? Sephiroth questioned as Toshiro smirked knowingly. In terms of Pettigrew, he will be serviced several levels of hell. Toshiro declared darkly. Black, in the other hand, I have informed him that trying to find a way out of Hogwarts and his supposed crimes was his problem. You have a plan for him, don't you? SapphireMonns and Sephiroth said in almost unison, as the captain shot them a surprised look before looking away with a silent retort. Shut up. Several hours ago, Toshiro shunned Pio'd out of Hogwarts, toward the murky cave that contained a desolate quiet that the captain truly wished to have at the moment. After the week of finals took even a toll over the captain, no matter on how easily he flew through them, staring at a parchment over and over again was exhausting. And he spoke from experience. Coming to the large screen that was erected by Yoruichi after lifting his defenses and replacing them, the ice captain transfigured SapphireMonns to his original Gigai, clipping his Zanpakuto his back with one hand, his U-wand in other. It was not long before the screen turned on, revealing Akon, the third seed of the 12th division, with a clipboard on hand. The Shinigami was tall, his head sporting a mop of brown spikes with a jagged, hairless line running through the side of it. 3 small horns protruded through the third seed's forehead as he donned a laboratory coat over his Shiakusho. Akon was one of the more tolerable of his division as he got things done and was calm in directing or obeying orders, which the ice captain had respected the third seed of. Captain of the 10th division, Hitsugaya Toshiro. The said person spoke aloofly, as per protocol. Acknowledged, Hitsugaya Taicho. Akon nodded as he met the white-haired captain's teal orbs. You will now be transferred to the head captain. Nodding in concealed surprise, Toshiro watched as the screen flickered to static before coming to the correct feed, displaying the head captain and his lieutenant, who stood a distance behind. Hitsugaya Taicho. The head captain addressed as the said person bowed his head lightly. I presume you have something to report. Yes, sir. Toshiro nodded as he met his superior's gaze. Pettigrew has been spotted and Lupin is informed of the situation after Harry Potter was found with the Marauder's map. Allowing his superior to absorb this, Toshiro paused, as the head captain nodded for him to continue. Nodding to his superior's permission, the ice captain obliged. Earlier today, in the midst of divination, Professor Sybil Trelawney incanted a prophecy concerning Voldemort, in which I shall repeat. Toshiro began as he seized the two's attention firmly. It will happen tonight. The Dark Lord lies alone and friendless, abandoned by his followers. His servant has been chained these 12 years. Tonight, before midnight, the servant will break free and set out to rejoin his master. The Dark Lord will rise again with his servant's aid, greater and more terrible than ever he was. Tonight, before midnight, the servant will set out to rejoin his master. How dependable are this Sybil Trelawney's predictions, Hitsugaya Taicho? Quote. They are not, head captain. Toshiro answered immediately. However, in this prediction, she may be dependable, as she had succumbed to a similar state as I have found, when she had predicted correctly the death of the Potters and for Harry Potter to place Voldemort into hiding. However, there is a second part to the prophecy. Toshiro added as he narrowed his teal orbs, to which neither the head captain and his lieutenant missed. With the ice captain's report coming to a finish, the ice captain waited. Hitsugaya Taicho. Sir. I give you permission to do as you have planned, however, at the event you do not succeed, you are to withdraw and use the memory modifiers upon all who have seen you. With a bend of his white tresses, the ice captain nodded as the connection was terminated, none missing the ice captain's slight frown and now, fisted hands, as the thought of all that he has met will no longer recall him if he had failed. Exiting from the cave, the ice captain gazed at the tall school that he currently attended. How foolish of me. Toshiro scolded himself bitterly as he allowed his mask to crumble slightly. I had nearly forgotten that they wouldn't remember me anyway. When they pass on to Soul Society, they wouldn't be able to recall their own loved ones, nonetheless, myself. I would only be a Shinigami that would escort them to the afterlife of Soul Society. Perhaps, Toshiro. Hiramaru said as the ice captain turned to find his Zanpakuto and Wand Guardian summoned behind him, both in their humanoid forms. But you and we will remember the events of which you have gained friends, and played well with them here. And that is enough. Sephiroth finished as the ice captain found a small smile upon his lips, his eyes sending a silent thanks to both of his dragons as they knelt beside him, icy gazes always watching. Chapter 20, Public Execution. Harry bit his lip as he ran down the corridor. In what Hermione revealed, was the Shrieking Shack, which Harry could see why everyone in Hogsmeade thought it was haunted. Musty furniture clouded the floor as dust collected over every surface. The wallpaper in every room Harry passed was yellowed with age as the boy ran, following the sound of his best friend's screams, the drapes moth-eaten, and the portraits empty. Ron. He, Neville, and Hermione shouted in a mixture of worry and desperation, racing down the rooms as they followed the paw prints of the apparent Grim and the signs of dragging which were obviously and worriedly, Ron. Coming to the room where the prince led, the threesome nearly fell forward in relief to find their friend, not unharmed but that the worst had not come. Ron. Harry sighed firmly as he addressed another issue as he gazed around the room, oblivious as Hermione scanned her friend for injury with Neville doing the same beside her. Ron, you're okay. She sighed in relief as Harry spoke. The dog, Harry pressed. Where is it? Quote. Ron, clutching Scabbers, his blue eyes wild with fear and appearance disheveled, pointed behind his friends as he shouted. It's a trap. He's the dog. The one who ripped up my curtains. He's an animagus. Quote. Turning to the direction that their friend had pointed, Harry and Hermione followed the paw prints of the supposed Grim. Neville whimpering beside Hermione, as they slowly turned ending at a figure, who closed the door that they entered only a few moments prior. With a creak of the door, revealed a gaunt Sirius Black, who walked toward them as if he was a possessed man. Pushing her spectacled friend behind her, Hermione shouted with fear. If you want to kill Harry, you have to kill us too. Quote. No, Black spat. Only one will die tonight. With a burst of anger and adrenaline, Harry shoved his friend aside, as he bellowed. Then it'll be you. Quote. Making a mad grab for the wanted criminal, Harry managed to get his hands around the former's neck, using his larger stature against him, pinning him to the musty floorboards, as he held him by the scruff of the neck with one hand, his wand on the other, pointed to his parents' murderer. A dark and ironic chuckle echoed from Black's lips as he took in his friend's son. Are you going to kill me, Harry? Quote. Before the boy could answer, Lupin burst open through the doors, his wand at the ready as he, to the trio's surprise, plus Neville, incanted the spell at Harry. Expelliarmus. At Lupin's spell, the wand was sparked from the young Potter's hand as the four children turned to look at their defense against the dark arts professor with confusion, and with slight realization in Hermione's case. Gesturing for Harry to move aside, the boy obliged, as he joined Hermione and Neville, who stood as far as possible from the chaos, with Ron frozen at the bed. Well, Sirius. Lupin drawled as he took in his old friend. Looking rather ragged, aren't we? Quote. Finally, Lupin continued, with his wand still pointed at the criminal. The flesh reflects the madness within. Sirius smirked from his splayed state. Well, you'd know all about the madness within, wouldn't you? Quote. Exchanging smiles, the four children watched with shocked expressions as Lupin lowered his wand and held out a hand to assist the criminal to get up before embracing one another in a hug. Before any of the children recovered, an icy voice from the doors sounded, shocking the children even more so. "Yes," Toshiro scoffed as he made his appearance known. "The three of us are well aware of the madness within, now aren't we?" Quote. Toshiro scanned the reactions of the five, or should he say, six, within the room as he made his appearance. The trio and Neville appeared stunned at his appearance, with Lupin and Black slightly relieved, as the captain eyed the rat in Ron's hands. "It appears that the rat has taken to the cheese," Toshiro thought. "And therefore, to the dog. And straight into the dragon's jaws." Sephiroth added frostily, as Hiranmaru growled in anticipation. "Right where we want him to be. For now." "Hitsugaya. You're with Lupin and Black?" Harry accused right out as the captain narrowed his orbs over the boy, teal orbs cold. Aye, Hermione stuttered as she appeared as shocked as Ron and Harry were accusing, with Neville just shocked in the toe. "I even defended you and said that you were innocent. But all this time you were with Sirius Black and Professor Lupin?" Exclamation mark. Quote. "You knew Lupin was in on this?" Harry questioned incredulously, turning to the girl with widened orbs. "He's a werewolf," Hermione accused as she dispersed Lupin's secret, who scowled and froze in his expression. "That's why he's been missing classes throughout the year, and Hitsugaya has been brewing potions for him." Quote. With a bitter smile, Lupin looked toward his student. "Hermione, you really are one of the brightest of your age I have ever met," Lupin praised bitterly as he shot her a pointed look. "How long have you known?" Quote. "Ever since Professor Snape had assigned the essay," she stated as Lupin nodded almost in silent scolding. "And when Professor Snape and Hitsugaya had delivered what Harry described as the Wolfsbane potion." Quote. "How observant of you, Granger." Toshiro cut in as he shunned PO'd to Ron, who flinched away, scabbers held protectively in his hands. With a sudden grab for Hermione's wand from her back pocket, Harry pointed it toward Hitsugaya, who regarded the wand for what it was, a stick. Turning his teal orbs to the boy, Toshiro nearly scoffed at the display. However, before the captain could say anything, Black had beaten him to the punch. "Enough talk, Remus. Hitsugaya," Black bellowed. "Let's just kill him." Quote. "Wait," Lupin said firmly, but Black was having none of it. "I did my waiting." Black spat with ferocity. 12 years of it. In Azkaban. Quote. "Enough, Black," Toshiro ordered as if he were speaking to a subordinate, which silenced Black to all surprise but the captain. "Potter needs to know the true story. You are not going to do any good jumping into killing Pettigrew without explanation." "Pettigrew?" Harry echoed, as he looked toward Black, then at the transfer. "But Peter Pettigrew is dead. He killed him and my parents. He's the reason why they're dead." Quote. "Wrong, Potter," Toshiro retorted darkly. With a swift shunpo that was too quick for the wizards and witch to see, the wand was sparked away from the boy who lived's hand, to find the captain's U-wand at his neck, its point grazing the pulsing flesh. "In the contrary, Pettigrew is very much alive," Toshiro said as everyone froze. "He is the one who has been responsible for your parents' death and the murders that Black was accused of, along with the factor of framing your godfather for it. Black was merely at the wrong place at the wrong time, as Pettigrew was your family's secret keeper. The four of them were friends: Pettigrew, Black, Lupin, and your father." "Pete, prove it," Neville spoke up, all eyes on the poor boy as he steeled himself to speak. "Pete, prove that Pettigrew is alive." Before anyone could, the wizards and witch blinked to find the captain gone, having shunned PO'd out of sight for the time being, only to have Snape enter through the halls of the Shrieking Shack. Black robes billowing, an ebony wand in hand. A gruesome smile covered the potion's master's lips, sneered with mocking. "Vengeance is sweet. Snape sneered, his tongue clicking, as he absorbed the chaos as he continued with his wand pointed at Black, who wrinkled in his nose in distaste. "How I hoped I'd be the one to catch you." Severus, Lupin tried to intervene, only to cower as Snape pointed his wand in the werewolf's direction in warning. "I informed Dumbledore that you were helping a friend into the castle, and here's the proof," Snape accused, his voice scathing as Lupin and Black neared one another, Black in front and Lupin behind, none noting the movement in the shadows behind Snape. "Brilliant, Snape," Black snapped just as fiercely. "Once again, you've put your keen and penetrating mind to the task and, as usual, have come to the wrong conclusion. Now then, if you'll excuse us," Black continued, his tone snobbish and snappy, catching himself before mentioning the captain. "Hit Remus and I have some unfinished business to attend to." Quote. Obviously enough, the words merely added fuel to the tension, resulting Snape pointing the end of his wand at the gaunt fugitive, as the students watched quietly, deciding whether or not to intervene. "Give me a reason." Snape spoke as if he were speaking to a disobedient student, the point of his wand at the former school enemy's throat. "I beg of you. Now, Severus, don't be a fool." Lupin tried to consolidate, only for Sirius to snap. "He can't help it. It's a habit." "Sirius, be quiet." Quote. "You be quiet, yourself, Remus." Quote. "As much it amuses me to see you two, quarreling like an old married couple," Snape sneered, only to be cut off by Black, who only aggravated the situation further, pestering Snape to jam the wand into the gaunt throat. "Why don't you run along and play with your chemistry set?" Quote. "I could do it, you know," Snape threatened, promise in his onyx orbs, only to soften with mirth at his followed words. "But why deny the Dementors?" Quote. "They are so longing to see you." Snape spoke as a flash of fear flashed over the fugitive's face, Snape catching it. "Do I detect a fear of fear? Oh, yes. A Dementor's kiss. One can only imagine what that must be like to endure. It's said to be nearly unbearable to witness, but I'll do my best." "I cannot allow that, unfortunately, Professor Snape," Hitsugaya said before he lifted a hand over the potion's master's surprised orbs, unable to see the captain other than a thin outline of an invisible being. "Way of binding. No. 65. Forced slumber." True to the incantation, the professor's onyx orbs dilated several times before falling over face first. Limp as Toshiro appeared once more, carrying the man who was double his stature with ease as Lupin tended to the potion's master, shocked eyes on the ice captain whose own narrowed on Neville. "Now then, Longbottom, you wish to see proof?" Toshiro questioned darkly, as Neville nodded. "Black." Toshiro waved as if he were giving permission to a subordinate, only to have Harry pull out Hermione's wand, pointed at the captain, werewolf, and fugitive, freezing them at their steps. "Tell me more about Peter Pettigrew," Harry said as the wand stopped at Toshiro, who was unfazed. "He went to school with us," Lupin explained quickly. "We thought he was our friend." Quote. "No," Harry denied. "Pettigrew's dead. He killed him." Quote. "No, he didn't," Lupin debunked. "I thought so too, until you mentioned seeing Pettigrew on the map, which Hitsugaya had pointed out that Pettigrew was alive." "The map was lying, then," Harry brushed aside. "The map never lies." Black snapped as he pointed with a finger. "Pettigrew's alive. And he's right there." Quote. Eyes following the fugitive's hand, the students recoiled in confusion as the accused was none other than Ron, who clutched his pet with surprise and panic. "Me?" Exclamation mark. The redhead cried in surprise as he began to vehemently deny it. "He's mental." Quote. "Not you." Sirius shook his head darkly. "You're rat." Quote. Then streamed in the denial. "Scabbers has been in my family for 12 years? Sirius nodded, his eyes maddening. "Curiously long life for a common house rat. He's missing a toe, isn't he?" Quote. "So what?" Ron retorted, not noticing how his friends began to put the pieces together, the captain standing aside as he watched the scene unfold. Emerald green orbs flashed to the icy teal, asking a silent question as the boy pulled and picked them into place. All they could find of Pettigrew was his. Harry trailed off as the captain merely rose an eyebrow, confirming the boy's thoughts. Finger. Black spat, as he neared the boy and rat, hovering over them darkly. The dirty coward cut it off so everyone would think he was dead. And then he transformed into a rat. Quote. Prove it then, Harry said finally, gesturing to Neville who shivered beside Hermione. Like Neville said, prove it. Prove that Pettigrew's alive. Gladly. Black snarled almost contentedly that he was able to do away with that nuisance. With a gnarled hand, the criminal tore the rat from his 12-year owner, the creature squeaking and squirming much to Ron's distress. What are you trying to do to him? Exclamation mark. Ron yelled, struggling to save his pet as the framed killer tore the rat from him. Scabbers. Quote. Leave him alone. Ron protested loudly, as Black ripped the creature from his owner's arms, Hermione and Neville holding him back with pitied looks. Get off of him. What are you doing? Exclamation mark. Quote. With a flick of his fingers, Black released the rat, the fugitive and the werewolf waving their respective wands as the creature tried to flee, missing until the rat came to a stop before the hallway, standing before an ice captain. With an icier than usual glare pointed at him, the rat recoiled, giving the two friends sufficient time to make their spell connect. Transfigured on his knees was Peter Pettigrew. Short in stature but taller than the captain, the man had grubby skin, small, watery eyes and a pointed nose, from what the captain presumed due to being in his animagus form for so long. He had a disgusting mop of mousy brown hair with a balding circle on the very top and on his right hand, an index finger was missing. Ignoring the stupefied looks on the children, the ice captain kept his stoic mask, with Black and Lupin bounding on either side of the captain. 3 wands pointed as the man curled within himself before looking to his former friends. Remus? The squeaky voice of Pettigrew rang as he looked at the werewolf before turning to the fugitive. Sirius. My old friends. Quote. Meeting with the captain's cold teal orbs, the man found only irritation and annoyance in those orbs, unsympathetic to him. Turning to the rest of the room for an exit, the man spotted the children. Harry. Look at you, Pettigrew exclaimed in mock happiness. You look so much like your father. Like James. We were the best of friends. Angrily, Black stepped up, his voice so angry he could have been frothing from the mouth, and the ice captain made no move to stop him. Master, will you allow this to continue? Hiranmaru questioned silently. As of now. Toshiro replied. Black has waited a while for it. I would be cruel to be hindering him from his vengeance. But I will cut in soon enough. Very well. Sephiroth ended as they all turned back to the scene. How dare you speak to Harry? How dare you talk about James in front of him? Black spat as Pettigrew fled to the piano, Lupin surrounding him on one side, Black on the other. You sold James and Lily to Voldemort. Lupin accused, wands pointed. Didn't you? Exclamation mark. Quote. I didn't mean to. Pettigrew denied with a squeal, a maddening look on his face. The Dark Lord. You have no idea the weapons he possesses. Ask yourself, Sirius. What would you have done? Quote. What would you have done? Exclamation mark. The former rat demanded as the fugitive looked at him with disbelief that he had to even consider the question. I would have died. Sirius retorted immediately. I would have died rather than to have betrayed my friends. Quote. Seeing his reasoning with his former friends was futile, the man turned to the ice captain, only to have Harry intercept them, the man breaking to a malicious smile as he grabbed the boy. Harry. James wouldn't have me killed. Your dad would have spared me. He would have shown me mercy. Quote. Enough of your groveling. Toshiro growled as he pushed Harry behind him, Black and Lupin rejoining him, each pointing their respective wands. "You have caused me a great nuisance, Pettigrew, and for that you pay dearly." "Stop!" Harry cried as the ice captain turned to the boy, wand still pointed at the true fugitive. "Hitsugaya. Don't kill him." Quote. "Harry," Lupin breathed with a sigh. "This is the man who killed." "I know who he is," the boy who lived interjected. "My father would not like that his remaining best friends would become killers. And I will not have Hitsugaya become a murderer. We will take him to the castle," Harry decided as he stood by the captain. "Then we'll let the Dementors have him." "That is not an option," was the ice captain's rebuttal, his teal orbs cold. "Why not?" Harry questioned as he turned to the captain, ignoring the groveling traitor who went to the captain's feet, thanking the captain for his apparent salvation. "Bless you, boy." "Bless you, stranger." Pettigrew groveled, when he found himself rebuffed, looking up with watery eyes to meet icy teal ones that were the coldest he had ever seen. There was no mercy in those eyes. "You are mistaken, Pettigrew," Toshiro spoke, voice sharp and cold. "Just because I cannot allow you to have your soul taken from you, it does not mean that I have a problem in severing it from your mortal existence." The short man froze and began to shiver in fear as the wizards and children surrounding him snapped their heads in surprise, eyes widened. "Hitsugaya, I told you, no one is killing anyone tonight," Harry growled when the ice captain stopped him with a glare. "You are overruled, Potter," Hitsugaya glared, annoyed with all the interruptions and time they were wasting. "We should kill him. Hitsugaya's got the right idea." Sirius nodded. "Why?" Harry demanded, green eyes filled with pent fury from the past year at the transfer, before turning to his godfather. "No. We are not killing him. Do you really want to be the murderer the world already believes you to be?" Quote. Black recoiled at his godson's words as the ice captain spoke. "The reason I had transferred here, Potter, is under the orders of my grandfather, and I was to investigate the disturbance and imbalance of souls along with attend Hogwarts for my education," Toshiro explained, as planned. "Dumbledore is aware of them, and that is why we cannot give Pettigrew to the Dementors. My orders were to disallow the consumption of souls to those beings, by any means necessary. And I never indicated that Black had to do it, Potter," Toshiro pointed out. "If you are uncomfortable with Lupin or Black doing it, then I'll take care of it." All turned to stare at the child-appearing captain with horror. "Why, you'd kill someone?" Neville squeaked softly as the ice captain merely shrugged, his teal orbs cold. "Jay, just like that?" Quote. "It would not be the first time I had to just for the sake of orders, Longbottom." The icy words rang, as chills crawled over each of their spines. Just how many had this child killed? To be fine with adding another to his list just like that? Shaking the thoughts aside, Harry refused when Sirius spoke up. "Harry, he killed your parents and deserves this. It is his fault that they are not here to take care of you. Allow Hitsugaya to follow his orders and be done with him." A silence enveloped, other than Pettigrew's whimpering as the boy who lived finally nodded. The ice captain turned to Black with a nod, before with a whisper and a snap of his fingers, golden chains bound the true criminal, a squeak sounding from him before the captain spoke. "I will do away with Pettigrew elsewhere for several reasons," Toshiro said, with a pointed look towards the children. "Professor Lupin. Black. I leave them and Snape to you." And with a shunpo that could have been mistaken for apparition, the ice captain was gone. Black foliage of the forest colored the traitor's vision as he found his surroundings, the child who had apparated him strangely changed. Instead of his prior Japanese robes with his white one over it, the boy donned an ebony V-neck hoodie under a black leather jacket, his clothing intimidating despite the child's small stature. Rugged navy jeans wrapped over his legs as combat boots hid his feet from view, a star-like chain across his chest as it held up a four-pointed blade on his back. As if to light the child like a beacon, His bone-white locks were tousled messily, slightly obscuring his teal orbs. Matsumoto, the child said, as the traitor looked at his captor confusedly, not understanding the language as another figure appeared. This one was dressed similarly to what the child donned before, only lacking in the white robe. It was a woman of tall stature about the height of Black, as she donned the same robes as the child, only with a pink scarf over her shoulders loosely. She had a curvaceous body and large endowments, her pale blue orbs framed on her small face as her strawberry locks were cut short at her jawline. Knelt on one knee, the woman bowed to the child, who nodded in approval. "Taicho," the woman said to the child before sending a glance to him as he shivered at the similar iciness that the child had given off in the woman's eyes. "Is this him?" Quote. "Yes," the child replied, the sound sending shivers to him as he shook involuntarily. "Are the squads in position?" Quote. "Yes, sir." "Very well." The child nodded as he turned to him. Pettigrew froze before he began to beg. Please. Please, boy. I have done you no wrong. Please spare me. Mercy, please." He groveled, grabbing the boy's boots, face in the dirt as he begged, tears streaming down his face as he looked to the boy, hoping to find a spark of sympathy that he could use. Or in the woman, maybe. Looking up, he found only an icy teal tempest of annoyance and irritation as an indifferent gaze of pale blue glaring over him beside it. There was no mercy or sympathy in those eyes. They were eyes that had seen this over and over again, that his death would just add a tally to the count and nothing more. Changing tactics, Pettigrew grew in confidence. "The Dark Lord will kill you all. He shall avenge my death as a loyal servant of the Lord. You shall burn and feel humiliation for what you have done to me. I promise you, you." Quote. And with a swift arc that severed the talking head from the body, the ice captain flicked the blood from his blade as the beheaded body fell back in a heap, the head rolling to a stop in an expression of mid-speech. With a soft groan that only the captain and his lieutenant could hear, they watched as Pettigrew emerged from his corpse, the familiar soul chain and gray hexagon on his chest. Wah! Was all Pettigrew managed to get out before the hollowification began, a bone-white mask covering the soul when, with an encore of the captain's Zanpakuto across the white, appeared the doors of hell. Once sealed and gone once more, Peter Pettigrew was no more. A silence overcame the forest after the captain sent a silent confringo to the carcass, the small fire curling into wisps of smoke as the two watched, the windows of their souls unmoved. "Taicho," the lieutenant began, only to be interrupted. "They're not here." The strawberry blonde glanced around her before turning back to her superior with a confused look. Not turning to his lieutenant, the ice captain gestured to the body. "You are in your soul form and I just performed Konso on Pettigrew, yet no Dementors are here. With Black gone, this would be." Before the captain could finish, a howl echoed into the night as Hitsugaya glanced at the sky, the full moon glowing in mockery as the lieutenant heard a rare and small curse on her captain's lips, her pale orbs widening in surprise. Before she could say anything, her captain was already speaking. "Regroup the squads to the edge of the forest, Matsumoto," Toshiro ordered, sheathing Hirenmaru as he pulled out his wand. "And prepare the squads for my signal, we have some hollows to dispose of, Matsumoto." "Yes, sir." And with a swift shunpo, the captain and his lieutenant disappeared, leaving burnt ashes at their feet. "They can't do anything without me," Toshiro snarled as he shunned Pio'd to a clearing, to where he found Black in his animagus form snarling at a transformed Lupin, leaving Snape shielding his students. Wasting none, the captain appeared before the werewolf, pointing his wand with a slight frown. "Confundo," the ice captain hissed, the effects of his charm taking on the werewolf, as the creature backed off in obvious confusion as a diversion. Turning to the potion's master and students, the ice captain spoke an order as if he were speaking to a subordinate. "Flee, Professor. Take them with you." Quote. Heeding his students' words, the professor had one slip from his grasp as Black tackled Lupin, the wolves baring fangs and claws at one another, snarling and tearing as they rolled on the dirt. Black fainted growls and claws at the werewolf as Lupin made no hesitation, scratching and baring tooth and nail for blood. Hitsugaya! Come back here, Potter! Hitsugaya! Snape's yells were ignored. Potter! The captain growled as he followed the beasts, the boy a distance away as howls paused the scuffle between their defense against the dark arts professor and the wanted fugitive. Ignoring the boy who lived running towards his godfather in concern, the ice captain was concerned with other things. Like who distracted Lupin, or what for that matter. Master, perhaps, this is not the first time we have been here. Sephiroth nodded, as the dragons turned to the howls. Teal orbs narrowed at the source of the howls before the ice captain connected the two and two, sending a glance to the golden hourglass on his neck. I see. Turning away from the howls, the ice captain disappeared. Only to appear before a freezing over lake, with an unconscious human form black and a petrified Harry behind him. Rested on the rocky shore, Black sported a wound on his shoulder, bleeding but not fatal, no doubt from Lupin. Potter had several mild wounds and scratches, but otherwise unharmed as he turned to the captain in almost a panic, pointing in the horizon. Hitsugaya. Quote. Glaring above them, the ice captain found what he wanted. Disfigured, hooded ebony figures floated over eerily, as the temperature dropped drastically, the ragged robes of the Dementors swaying with ominous rattles. The dark beings hungrily calling for others to join them in the feast. Encircling them like the eye of an ebony storm, the Dementors grew bold as one neared the three, sucking away the happiness from Black, seeing as the fugitive was their main course. Lifting his wand, the only living boy trialed and toiled over as he practiced, only to fail with no avail as a Dementor neared the boy for a morsel, as if to mock him for his futile attempts. Taking the advantage, a Dementor neared the captain, only to be blown off, with a snarl, as the captain shot a silent spell. Expecto Patronum, Toshiro whispered, his voice cold. Harry recoiled as he fell on his bum, eyes wide at the sight of the captain's corporeal Patronus. It was a large serpentine dragon, white and wisps in color as the beast bared its rows of dagger-like fangs at the Dementors, hovering over the captain as if he were protecting him from all the evil of the world, the black dark beings swarming the dragon like flies to a jar honey. Now, Matsumoto! The ice captain yelled into the forest as Harry looked at the ice captain confusedly when ebony beings caught his eye. Thinking they were more Dementors, the boy ducked his face into his godfather's shoulder, shielding them from their impending doom. Only for an odd series of cries take him from his shielded form, realizing that he was not dead and neither was his godfather. Looking up, Harry found himself silenced, whether it was shock or awe, he didn't know. The dark beings were in actuality, men and women donned in ebony robes, much like he had seen Hitsugaya don. Blades by their waists as they leapt from the treetops with fluidity as they each incanted with multicolored wandless magic, firing with deadly accuracy at the Dementors. The boy who lived marveling at the sight as every Dementor was sent into a dissipating pile of gray smoke. Eyes catching something white, the boy found the ice captain several feet away on the frozen lake, teal orbs cold and blade unsheathed as the captain did the opposite with his wand, the white dragon disappearing like the Dementors. Regroup behind me. Toshiro ordered his subordinates, following as their superior demanded, each one having taken on the same serious look their captain was famous for, all ignoring the boy who watched them. With the disappearance of the Dementors, the boy found something more horrifying take their place. From the tens of Dementors that surrounded them moments ago, stood nearly 100 of tall beings differing in size and expressions, only having a bone-white mask in common with one another. With a swift shunpo, the ice captain stood in midair, his hands folded outward, as a large orange box encircled the hollows, entrapping them for the time being. Taicho. Harry heard a woman cry, not understanding a word they said, as she stood beside Toshiro, a concerned look at him as Harry could have sworn that the white-haired boy was sporting a ghost of a smirk. Matsumoto. Hitsugaya nodded, before he turned to glance at his subordinates. Lead the squads to the Senkaimon and report to Yukitaki. He will report to the head captain for you. I will deal with this. I cannot allow you the squad to be here when I use Shikai. Yes, Taicho. The lieutenant bowed, sending a glance to Harry. But what about the boy? Wouldn't he be crushed in the Ryatsu? Quote. I need him unconscious anyway, Hitsugaya responded, as all eyes turned on the boy, who suddenly felt like he was being judged. He is irrelevant. Not to mention useless. A voice muttered behind him, as the ice captain bit back a snort. Instead, he turned to his lieutenant, orbs cold yet silently speaking to her. Enough. Matsumoto, go. I'm counting on you and the rest of you as well. Now, go. Quote. Yes, sir. His squad roared in unison as they shunned Pio'd away, following their lieutenant, leaving their captain with a glance. Once his subordinates were far enough, the captain held the blade parallel to the ground as he tilted his head almost mockingly, as if he were trying to decide whether to rid of them slowly or quickly, not minding with the fact that the orange keto was beginning to crack. Harry stared, too many thoughts in his head, making the boy reeling, his godfather nearly forgotten if he had not moaned every once in a while to indicate that he was still alive. Who were those people? They were able to do the same magic as Hitsugaya, and all seemed to obey whatever Hitsugaya told them to do. And then they just apparated out of there. What happened to the Dementors? What the bloody hell was those things that were in that orange box Hitsugaya conjured? Just what the bloody hell is going on? Stop thinking, Potter. Toshiro snapped, as the boy found the captain glancing at him with a risen eyebrow. You'll hurt yourself from thinking too much. This will make you feel a bit uncomfortable, but don't worry, you'll survive. Probably. The ice captain added as an afterthought as the living boy sent him an incredulous look. Probably? Exclamation mark. Harry cried. What the bloody? Quote. Here, Toshiro interjected, throwing his kikanshinki, disguised as a pen, at the boy. Hold that to Black's face and press the button on top. What's this do? Harry inquired, but doing as the captain instructed nonetheless. Like this? Quote. No, Toshiro said before disappearing, and then appearing before the boy. It's more like this. Wait. What are you? Exclamation mark. Harry bellowed as the pen was dissipated from his hands, the ice captain clicking the pen before him, then his godfather. Harry cut himself off a second time, as he felt a great pressure come over his body, as if a weight was placed on his chest, inhaling that large cloud of a purple powder that the pen released. Crumpling beside his godfather as the weight grew with every agonizing second, Harry merely watched with a combination of anticipation and awe as the ice captain soared into the air once more with a swift shunpo before falling unconscious with his godfather. Breaking his own barrier, shattering only one wall, with just enough room for several hollows to escape at a time, the ice captain began to glow a light blue light, nearly white as he lifted his Zanpakuto, after slicing the first wave. Rain over the heavens, Hiranmaru. At the release of his Zanpakuto, the blade grew in length as the captain lifted the blade perpendicular to the ground, a crescent-shaped blade attached to the end with a long chain. Rising from the waters of the frozen lake to Harry's horror and sheer amazement, came a life-size ice dragon made of water and ice, jaws of icicles and eyes a cold ruby. With an almost lazy swipe of his blade, the captain directed his blade toward the onslaught of hollow, the ice dragon obeying, as the hollows were frozen before the captain. And with a final overarching arc, the hollows dissipated into Soul Society or Hell, leaving half of the hollows. Roaring at the defeat of their kind, the hollows charged as the captain readied his stance, sealing his Shikai as he did so, decidedly not needing to overexert himself. Let's see if my Hakuda is improved, like Shiwan said. Toshiro thought as he backflipped, sending a powerful kick to his left, cracking open the mask. One down, 49 to go. After 44 more kicks, punches, and keto spells, the Ice Captain faced a mere 5 hollows left before him, sporting a minor wound on his gigai, 4 in number and thin in size. As the Ice Captain reached to seal them with ice as a temporary fix when SapphireMonns spoke. "Master, perhaps we should allow this injury to be untouched." The Elder Ice Dragon said as the Master and Wand Guardian rose an eyebrow at that. "You would need to be incapacitated as well with Potter and Black, seeing as how Snape has seen you along with the other children. It would be odd and raise suspicion if you were found unscathed." "Very well." Toshiro receded, as he turned back to the hollows, doing away with them quickly as the captain came before the unconscious duo, sensing the Rayotsis of the professors a near fourth of a mile away. "Damn." Toshiro winced as he looked himself over. "This is why I hate not sealing them up immediately. Curse this, how the bloody hell did I get myself into this anyway?" 2 pointed looks shot to him. The Ice Captain rolled his eyes. "I know." Due to his small stature and the fact that he was, even begrudgingly, it was what he was, a child. Blood loss was a problem and concern that the captain did not have much to lose until he grew woozy, unlike his cohorts. Covered in light grime and several cuts from his finished brawl with the hollows and the wounds on his back, the captain deemed himself believable in appearance for discovery by the wizards, all the while ignoring the chuckles of the 2 ice dragons in the background at his expense. Slumping himself against the trees slightly away from the wanted fugitive and his godson, the Ice Captain leaned back, closing his teal orbs as he left his bloodied Zanpakuto and wand off to the side. And then, he knew nothing more.
Unfortunately, this part is over. I hope you enjoyed it. Please have a good morning, afternoon, evening or night. See ya next time.